Hello there, and welcome to Nancy Lohr's Reselling into Retirement. What I do here is I interview people who are of the age of 55 and over, and it's people who are transitioning from their full-time jobs into a reselling job. Some people have been doing their positions for a lot of years, and they realize it's time to move on to something else, but they're not quite sure what to do. So the people that I'm interviewing today, I have Bill that we're interviewing today, and I appreciate you being on the channel today. And he is transitioning. He's been in his job for many years, and he's transitioning into reselling. And we're going to talk about his trials, tribulations, just some of the things that he's encountered and kind of where he's at now and where he's going. So, Bill, thanks for being my guest. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Glad I could be of service, and I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
Yeah, Bill and I had a conversation on Sunday, and it's amazing, just people's journeys. When you get to this point in life, and he has a very interesting career and background. So, if you could kind of tell us, what your career is and how you started
Sure.
out and how you got into reselling. I mean, how do we fall into this crazy thing?
Well, sure. I've been a headhunter for about 30 years, and I work in a couple of areas in the steel distribution business and the basically like advertising agencies that are super specialized in the pharmaceutical vertical, and they're called healthcare communications agencies. And before that, I was a naval officer in the U.S. Navy. And my first job out of the service was I was working to get a job through an executive search firm, and they actually offered me a job as a headhunter. And back then, they didn't take kids out of the service to make them headhunters. Usually they took some executive that had 25 or 30 years experience. So I was very fortunate to be in a firm that had a lot of experienced people, and they taught me the business. And then, one day I was saying to myself, well, I'm giving up, I'm getting 33% commission on a deal. If I had my own business, I'd keep 100%. So I sat out my non-compete time, and then I started this business that I have today. And like most things that you do forever and ever and ever, sometimes you want to change. You want to change it up, and when there's no new learning happening, in my case, I wanted to find something new and challenging and exciting. And I found online just sort of happenstance. And I started this business. I've been in reselling now for about 5 years. And I started the very simple way of just having a few things around the house. I had some old watches, some old jewelry, some knickknacks, some old pens, and just started to put them up online one by one. A couple of watches were worth some decent money, so that kind of fueled the business a little bit. And in my particular case, after doing commercial deals and placing executives into companies, the excitement wore off. And this whole new learning modality presented itself, because it's not an easy business, as you know. There's 10 different facets, and you have to become an expert in all of them to be able to be successful and have a self-sustaining business that can support you and your family. You can't just do it by selling knickknacks and one-off items. You really have to make a concerted effort to jump into it and to learn how to source and how to photograph and how to list and how to have an inventory and how to manage that inventory and how to do shipping. And eBay is, it's an all-in-one business, and you're the one. So it's exciting. And was interesting dynamic that happened for me was that I found that when I would buy something that I thought somebody would want, and then that sale took place, that was equally or more fulfilling than placing some guy that I don't know into an executive job somewhere, here or around the world. The commissions, of course, were much, much greater in the recruiting business, and they remain that way. But there's something uniquely satisfying about making $20 on a little sale.
I totally agree. And I don't know why that is. Like you said, I mean, there's just so much more fulfillment in that, even though you've
Yeah,
put probably just as much time, into, each one, but
that's right.
there just seems to be some, because you know that, how can I say this? Selling that little $20 widget leads to more. It's
Yeah,
just says, hey, I had an inkling that people would like this, and they do, and
yeah,
I can buy more of that, or I can buy things that are like that, or what else is out there. It
that's
just
right.
it just expands your horizons, and it feeds on your creativity.
That's right.
Where, I mean, I think I mean, I don't know anything or much about what you do as far as headhunting, but is that the correct term? I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
Is that a slang term? Okay,
Well,
but
some people consider it to be a slang term, but I was hired as a headhunter, and 30 years later, I'm still a headhunter.
yeah, right. I mean, I really wasn't sure, and I've had
Yeah,
experience with headhunters and stuff, but I can
yeah,
imagine that it can be pretty grueling and very nerve wracking in industry.
yeah.
Trying to
Well,
place, it's like sometime putting a square, what do they call it? Square peg in the round hole.
well, that's a good observation. Headhunting is a two-sided conceptual sale, and both sides, the client and the employee, can talk, and they usually do it the wrong time. And so, as the agent of the deal, you're bringing the two people together in a way that, based on your skills that you developed over your career, you have an innate understanding of people, how they'll fit and function in a particular job opportunity, in accordance with where they are in their life, their personal life and their professional life. You have to take into all those things. People are getting married, they're getting divorced, they're having kids, they're burying parents or loved ones, and all of these factors are considerable elements. And when you call up somebody out of the blue on a Tuesday afternoon at 2 o'clock, and you talk to Johnny or Susie, all these other things are going on in their life, and the last thing they want to think about is making a job change. And so you have to work through all those elements in accordance with what's going on in their life, and try to dovetail that with what the client needs. And it does get nerve wracking, and deals fall apart and deals come together and all those kinds of things. But after 30 years, there are no more exciting elements. A deal is a deal, and there's
Yeah,
not a lot of new learning going on.
yeah,
And you would think, when I started, there weren't computers, there weren't PCs. We did everything on note cards, and now there's LinkedIn, and the accessibility to people is different. But there's not a computer program that can close a deal between a person and a company. It's still done the old-fashioned way, with an agent, a talent person. Actors and musicians have it, athletes have it, and a lot of people in the professional workforce have it. So
yeah. I mean, that is it's quite an industry, and I was always pretty fascinated by it because there's just so many things that are involved, and a lot of it is your own expertise and intuition and what you see, and the possibilities that you see, and trying to sell somebody on what you see if they don't
that's
see
right.
it. So I
So
mean,
that's right. So I was thinking about the question you asked. Well, then why eBay? Well, there's a magic of closing a deal that you only realize when the deal is closed. And it's the summation of all the work that you've put in, whether it's recruiting or selling or reselling items online. So I knew I wanted to be involved in something in sales. And what eBay presented was a legitimate way of being in the sales arena without having to be a professional salesman, without having to close an individual or close a client to get them to an agreement on something. The platform does that part for you. as long as you present your items in a way that are, you know, easily accessible to and understandable by the clients, the eBay platform provides that closing mechanism for you. Either they want it or they don't. And so it's a way to be in sales without having to be a professional salesperson. There are a lot of elements that apply from professional sales into selling or reselling items, but they are not direct sales skills that you have to be successful.
And I guess people like you and I, who have a sales marketing background, we see the value in that.
Yeah.
I mean, that's huge. Where a lot of people, and I don't want to say people just are ignorant of it, but sometimes you don't really understand that unless you have that background, you have that sales and marketing background, just because there's a whole lot that happens between buying a product or obtaining a product and the tail end of the purchase, the sale.
That's right.
There's a whole lot that happens in between that. And maybe some people don't realize that, but once you do, you realize the value of having this platform, and the millions of people that are attracted to eBay on a daily basis.
That's so true. And the other thing is that there are a lot of people who can add value to somebody's life by selling them something that don't actually have sales skills, that they were never interested in sales or marketing. And so the platform basically, I'm in the clothing business, eBay is like my mannequin that never never needs a rest, right? And those mannequins, man, they're amazing.
They're workers. They are workers.
They're workers, man. And so for people who are considering transitioning into another way to generate revenue for them and their families, this is a tremendous opportunity for people who maybe they're great at prospecting items to sell, whatever the niche is, because there's a lot of niches to be successful on eBay. But if they don't have sales skills, eBay replaces those selling skills for you. So your organizational skills, your shopping skills, your dynamics of how your ability to ship, all those things are super important. And those kinds of things can be your real assets, especially if you don't have a personality that's suited for being that person in the room that's got to be shaking everybody's hand. And, there are a lot of people who are not gregarious in this business.
Yes, that's true. And I think they're really attracted to this business because of that, because they could do it in their pajamas. They don't ever have to leave the house in many ways. You can have a product that comes to you, if you find the right connections. And there's just, the sky's the limit. It just blows my mind, when as I get deeper.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No problem. Go ahead.
Well, in the headhunting business, over the last 30 years, I've worked with people from, let's say, 75,000 in annual salary to like 900, 950,000. And at every gradation of income, you can find a tremendous amount of people who are totally unhappy with what they're doing for their job, but they're locked in because of their lifestyle. And what eBay allows you to do is to be happy in the productivity of that income. Because once you get into eBay and you say there's 10 functions you have to learn, it's not just about knowing how to shop. It's not just about knowing how to take photos or how to build listings or how to run the platform itself. But it's all those things together. And you can find your niche without having to be a salesperson. And I haven't heard in the 5 years that I've been reselling on eBay, I haven't heard one person say to me, "Oh, I just really hate this. I'm just in it for the money." eBay is a business that you're going to do because you love doing it. And there are so many executives and managers and middle managers that are going to work every day to make X amount of dollars, and they absolutely hate it. It's moms and dads who don't want to be away from their spouses or their kids, or they have, parents that are in need and they need to be close to home. This is a business that can solve a lot of problems, logistical problems, of where you make your money and how you make your money. And then you just have to ranch it up to be able to make the money that you need to make. And, like in my case, I have about 5,500 items today of unique listings, well over 6,000 items. My sales are around 18,000 for the month. We got a few days left in the month, 8 days left in the month. So what I'm trying to drive my business to is about $50,000 of sales a month. I'm almost halfway there, and I'm still doing this part-time. So I really recommend it for people who want to consider a new way of making a living for themselves at this age. The other thing about being a professional salesperson, like yourself, like myself, there's a time where, you have a shelf life, right? With eBay, I don't have to put a suit on. I don't have to get my hair done, my nails done. I don't have to do all these things. I don't have to shave if I want to. I don't have to be presentable. And then I don't have to put that persona on that requires me to have to go deal with some 35-year-old person that's just now trying to make their bones in life. And they have decision-making capability over what I need to do.
And even though you have all this expertise and experience of years, many times when you're talking to somebody that's 30 years younger than you are, I'm not saying everybody,
Right.
a lot of people, they don't realize the value of that. They don't.
Oh yeah, they
realize
totally
you have
discount it.
They don't realize what you bring to the table, because our minds are still sharp. It's just the bodies that are falling apart.
That's right.
But our minds,
So
I mean,
funny.
that cog is turning, that we're better than ever in many ways, but our bodies maybe not so much.
It's really interesting you said that, because I work in the pharmaceutical business with the agencies, and pharma companies, their modality of operating was, you basically had to be model quality as a girl or a guy for them to make you a drug rep. They figured they can't teach the looks, they could teach the medical part, but every doctor wants to look across the table from a good looking person. And they pair up. They send the girls to the guys, and they send the guy reps to the girl doctors.
Yes, that's so
And
true.
that's the way that business works. And it's in medical device as well. And, at some point, you just stop relating to the client. And they don't want to talk to a 61-year-old guy. They want to talk to some 38-year-old guy.
Mhm.
So there's that element that eBay replaces, because the platform is the middleman between you and the customer. And it's a beautiful, beautiful way to do business.
Oh, you bring up so many good points in this, because at our age, and it's not, it is, but it isn't different. I mean, we have gotten to a point. You just, how should I say this? When we started out, most people stayed in the same profession for 30, 35 years, whatever the case may be. They didn't waver. They might have had a part-time job here or there, but they stayed in their profession. I mean, you didn't jump right. Nowadays, people are jumping around all over. You're supposed to. I mean, they encourage that in, our professions, the sales professions, but at our age, people stayed in that profession for many years. And now you're at a point where you're in your 60s or your 50s or whatever. And it's like, okay, I'm really, do I need to stay in this? I'm not happy doing this. In fact, I'm miserable. What can I do though with my time where I can make as much money as I'm making and love it?
Well, that's right.
A lot of people have problems with that, and they don't know how to transition.
Well, you made me think about when I left recruiting to serve a 2-year non-compete agreement with my employer. And I worked as a sales guy And, I had a company car and I'd drive around the country and stay in hotels 4 nights a week and, you know, do all the things you do on the road. And sometimes you eat well, sometimes you eat poorly. And I had too much ice cream and, not enough protein and all those, things you do. But at the end of the day, you're coming back to a hotel or a series of hotels, and then you get back to your house on the weekend, and then you rest for 2 days, you go back on the road and do it again. And so many people, when you're young, you can do that life when you're younger. That's a hard life to do when you're 50 or 65 years old.
And entertain customers after work at night, all night when they want,
That's
they want
right.
when they're drinking on your dime. Oh my gosh. And you've got to be right there with them, next to them. I mean, you don't have to be doing the drinking, but if they want to party till dawn, you've got to, you're footing the bill.
That's right.
That's
So many selling situations are just like that, where you're expected to interact with the customer, and you need to do what the customer wants to do. Take them to a ball game, a hockey game, a bar, a golf course. Well, what if you don't like golfing anymore? What if you don't want to go to a bar? Or what if you don't want to go have a steak dinner with 5 other people? But that's a part of being a professional salesperson or marketer and other professions that are in the grind doing it for some corporation. You got to do those things. And, after years and years and years of that stuff, there's no essential value that you can take from that for your own enjoyment and your own gratification, other than it may lead to a sale. And it may not lead to a sale, right? So
it's like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
you have to
But
do what you have to do.
you still have to get out there and do it and hope it leads to something, and
That's right. And
but
so
it's
now
a tough gig.
with the reselling business, I mean, you could be a teacher where you're working till 3:30 in the afternoon, and then you get to go home, but you still have to do lesson plans, and then you still have to get up early because school starts early and get there the next morning, and then you're dealing with someone else's kids. And now a teacher doesn't have any real authority to do any kind of disciplining. I mean,
Right.
when I went to school, I remember when I was in the 7th grade, I got paddled for being a wise mouth, 7th grader. And I still remember that guy's name. It was Mr. Hebda. He was my woodshop teacher, and he brought me up in front of the class and dropped trowel and paddled me right in front of the class. Well, you can't do that anymore, right?
No.
I never messed up in that class again. I still remember that guy, 50 some odd years later. But there's none of that going on now. So, there's so much you have to do as a teacher that you really don't have any authority to affect any kind of change. Well, I know a lot of teachers that do reselling with eBay, and they never want to look back. Yeah, I did that for a while. This is so much easier. I don't have any kids I got to deal with, any angry parents
Right.
I have to deal with.
And
And
not to mention that the world has really changed in the last couple of years.
right,
And it makes it impossible in many
yeah,
ways to conduct business the way we did prior to 2020.
that's right. And there's another element here you just made me think about, because we're talking about you and your husband and his profession, and this is a business you could actually do with your spouse
Mhm. And children.
and or your kids. Because my wife and one of my kids works in the business with me, and it's a great way to keep the family together and doing something that's engaging, and everybody wins. They get money, I get money, they get more money, I get money, and you're doing something together. And so that's the way that our country used to work, um, you know, several decades ago. You don't find that very often
No,
anymore
no, you
in
don't.
many parts of society. And then, I think the other aspect for reselling in your 50s is whether you have a pension or retirement plan or not, you can literally develop your business to a level that will support you and your family with ongoing recurring cash flow to pay your bills.
Mhm.
So that's a beautiful a beautiful thing. It's dependent on you. It's not easy. It's hard work. It requires consistent effort, and you have to be involved in it every day. But once you get the business up and it is self-sustainable, you can work your lifestyle into your business. And, if you need to make $500 a month or $5,000 a month or $50,000 a month, you can do it. And I know people at all those different levels and in between.
Yes.
And where else can you go and with very little risk be able to do that with some guarantees that it's going to work?
Absolutely. I mean, there's never been a better time either, I don't think. I
Yeah.
know people say, we're heading into a recession. Some people say we're in the recession right now, but I think what we're doing, reselling,
Yep.
is perfect for this time, for being in this recession mode, because people are looking,
right.
they are looking to cut corners, but there's
Yeah.
spending that people will still do. People are still going to buy things that make them feel good.
That's right.
People are still going to buy makeup. People are still going to get their hair done. People are still going to buy clothing. And I think, they may think about buying used clothing,
Yeah.
clothing from a reseller, just
Right.
to save money. And and there's so many other things. I'm just touching on the things that, I deal with, but the sky is the limit. And you can.
I'll give you an example. A couple of examples, actually. This is a business where the eBay business, the reselling business, where you can actually monetize your passion. If your passion is clothing, if it's logging, if it's dental equipment, if it's office supplies, if it's technology, if it's video machines, if it's danceware, maybe we're reaching somebody who's, they love the tango and Latin dances, or maybe they're a chef, or they work in the food industry. Whatever your passion is, which could possibly be your expertise as well. We call them in the recruiting world, we call them a SME, a subject matter expert. You can literally transition that into a way to make money for yourself. Many of our passions and our hobbies are things that we just use to pass the time away, to enjoy, but to pass the time away. This is a business where, especially at our age, where we have so many years of life behind us and a lot more years ahead of us, to be able to transition those passions into a money-making platform, literally for the rest of our life.
Absolutely.
Now, maybe I should give you two examples. I was at a distributor. I was checking out with a cart full of clothes, and my wife, Lena, asked me to scan some makeup. I was like, yeah, I scanned that last week. I don't think it's any good. But I was mistaken. It was a teal colored box. I'd scanned another product. This thing was $1.50 at the distributor. We sold, 120 over the weekend at $37.95. The total shipping weight was 2.5 ounces. So it's a tiny little, it was an eyebrow enhancer for women. But it's a hot cosmetic, just happened to find them. And that was a nice little boost to the business over the weekend. And then I was at the Goodwill bins last week, where you don't ever have to go to the Goodwill bins in this business. But I found two items that were like $1 each, and one of them's already sold for like $25. So where can you go to take $1 into 25 or $1.50 into $37.95? There are very, very few places where that kind of return on investment is possible. When people who buy companies, when they buy a business, they're looking for a 33% return over the course of a year or two or three. We're talking about thousands of percent return in the matter of 2 or 3 days. Mm-hmm. That kind of dynamic doesn't really happen all that often in the business world anywhere in this country. But it can happen for our listeners through the eBay business because it happens all the time.
Right.
I'm sure you found the same thing.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely crazy. It's just crazy. And the gratification that comes from when somebody, when you, and sometimes you got to go with your gut. I mean, you just got to,
Right.
and a lot of it is education. I mean, you've got to really educate yourself about what's out there, what
That's
kind
right.
of return on investment. I mean, you've got to know your numbers. You can't just blindly go into something. I mean, if you want to be successful, you can't blindly
Right.
go into something and think that it's going to just be all right. I mean, you got to do your homework
Mhm.
before that. And there's a lot of resources out there, like the reseller Nirvana group that we are in.
Yeah.
A lot of resources that are in that group that help you to become as successful as you want to. But those products, when just the
Yeah.
gratification that you get, and you think, oh, okay, I'm paying $1 for this, but this is like I sell books, I sell clothing, and I sell books.
Yeah.
So I have an app on my phone that if I scan a book that I'm paying $1 for, or even $3 for, and I have an app that could tell me that the potential on that is I can make $100 profit. I can make a
Right.
$100
Yeah.
profit. How fast did that book sell? It tells me how fast that book sells. It tells me uh, there's just, and how much, and I sell that on Amazon. If I'm selling that on Amazon, how much they make, how much I make, and how quickly it turns. I mean, where can you find that? That, and
You
that's
know,
just one thing out of so many different things. You can
that's
do that
right.
not just with media or books. You can do that with other, like, makeup,
Oh my
and
gosh. Yeah.
groceries.
Yeah.
So it's out
You know,
there.
during the when the pandemic hit, I got introduced to yeast, and we sold $190,000 worth of yeast on Amazon, some on eBay, but mostly on Amazon.
I can see people now. Everybody's going to be just running and buying yeast after you said
Yeah,
that.
well, there's no money in yeast today, but um,
But
you
yeah,
know,
I mean,
I
yeah.
was
Talk about
yeah.
the series of events that happened that made that yeast so profitable at the time.
Okay, so what happened? The dynamic was that when people were staying at home and couldn't go to work, all the people who baked goods for their families or sold goods, and the people who made wine and beer, their normative levels or accessibility to yeast was diminished because Fleischmann's and the other yeast manufacturers weren't prepared for the demand that continually increased during the pandemic. As more people were at home, they needed things to do, so they were baking more, cooking more, making more beer and wine. The beer and wine makers were going crazy because they were just, making beer and wine, drinking it all, making it more, making it more. And so subsequently what happened was there was an avalanche of need in the marketplace, but not enough supply. So if you're enterprising, you could go to 25 stores and you could go find yeast and then list it on Amazon and eBay and sell it. And now what was happening is, as you can imagine, with fewer people, let's say you go to your like a Publix grocery store here in Florida, Costco, um, Walmart, BJ's, Sam's Club. Those would be the major chains that have, Target has a grocery. Initially, you could get all the yeast you wanted if you go. So I could go and buy 500 packs. I'd buy out a store. And the yeast would go from $1.10 to $3 to $5 to $12 for like a 3-pack, a little 3-pack, 1 strip of 3 packs of yeast. Sometimes it was going as high as $18 or $19 because the demand was super high, but the availability wasn't there. So we had yeast in Florida, but a lot of places were so. If you're in Wisconsin, there's more bakers in Wisconsin and Michigan than there are in Florida. Evidently, they couldn't get yeast, so they were going to Amazon and eBay to buy their yeast. And then a couple weeks later, then the schools needed yeast to teach for the science classes and stuff. So it just snowballed. Now, we also shopped in specialty food stores. So my wife is from Colombia in South America, but we would go to the Latin stores, and all the yeast we could want was in those Latin stores. Where people who didn't know to go to a Latin grocery store, I had a shoe in because my wife's like, oh, we need to go to Pablo's, whatever, grocery. And so we go there and we get cases of yeast. And so we had all the inventory.
I'm just thinking about these people. Oh, here comes that guy again. He's going to buy all our yeast. What's he doing with that yeast?
That's right. Well, they probably thought I was a drug dealer. And then what happened was the store started putting limits on the yeast. So you could go in and buy one strip of yeast. And then, so you have to be creative and what time in the store you get there and how many times you go back. So let's say let's say my local grocery store, I would go in, and then my wife would go in, and then my kids would go in, and we'd all purchase the maximum quantity. And then we'd do that again later in the day, that kind of thing. But we had 25 or 35 stores that we would go to on a regular basis to get the supply. Then we started, look, I'm a clothing seller, but here I was selling specialty food items because it just worked out that I had access to it, and I was aware that there was a need in the marketplace. But that led to toilet paper and paper towels. And if you remember in the pandemic, there was a huge rush on personal hygiene products. And that led to, dog training pads, and then elderly people who needed, diapers and pads for their bedding had incontinence problems. So I was literally selling those paper products, that whole category, and I would never even think to buy that stuff for myself. So you could literally sell a big pack of, let's say a 12 or 16 pack of paper towels for $100. That's what it was going for. You can imagine that. Plus shipping. And it's expensive to ship paper towels or toilet paper, let me tell you.
Yes, yeah, it is.
But if you're in New York, in Manhattan, and you need toilet paper or paper towels, you're going to buy that stuff.
That's right. You have to have it.
You have to have it. And then there was recently a run on, same thing happened in the formula industry. That happened in the yeast industry wasn't prepared for the demand. Neither was the formula industry.
No, I remember that.
Yeah. And so, I was selling a lot of baby formula, but I'm primarily a clothing seller. So there are other opportunities that come up that you can, if you're just paying attention to what's happening in the market, those opportunities will avail themselves to you. And just with a little creativity, you can get the items and sell them around the world, literally. I've sold to probably over 50 countries now in my 5 years.
Wow.
Every state and 50 countries. So it's pretty exciting business opportunity for someone that's looking for a way to generate revenue for them and their family with relatively zero risk and very low cost to get in.
Yeah. I mean, if something isn't working for you, you just don't buy it anymore and buy
right.
something else.
And we have this tremendous opportunity to turn $1 or $5 into 10 or 20 or $30 and then reinvest that money back into the business to buy more inventory. Mm-hmm. And it happens at a very, very quick level. The eBay platform and the Amazon platform are different in that the Amazon platform is, generally speaking, things sell super, super fast. Mm-hmm. With eBay, you have the opportunity to maximize your profits differently than you do on Amazon. Sometimes it takes a little bit slower than Amazon, but you learn to wait for the customers that you need to support your business. But with those makeup, with the brand was called, or maybe I shouldn't say the brand.
Oh yeah, right.
I'm looking for more of it right now. But I put
you better not say anything. People will be running out and getting it.
They'll be running out and then polluting the marketplace. Yeah. But on eBay, I listed 26 as my first listing quantity with the eyebrow definers. And one lady bought 14 in like 10 minutes after the listing was up. So I researched her and found out she had a store somewhere in New York and she was going to put it in her store. But she paid my full price. So you can sell high quantity and maximize your profitability, or sell one at a time. We call it organic sales, one, 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 one. Or sometimes, you sell a lot more than 14. So, once you get into your niche and you develop some expertise, that those things will all flow to you.
And doing this on a consistent basis and reaching out and giving excellent customer service, you'll get repeat buyers.
Yes, that's right. And eBay will tell you, hey, this is a repeat buyer. So maybe you can give them a discount, you send them a thank you note, and tell them you appreciate their business. If I've found that, like, I've learned some things from my wife, my wife is a person who cares deep, like she was a seamstress. So she cares about the fabric and the quality of the fabric and cleaning the fabric properly and folding it properly. I'm some loghead guy, I fold it 3 ways and put it in a plastic bag and put it in the envelope. Not her, she wants to have not a single wrinkle. It's got to be, she's very meticulous, and the
point.
What's that?
She's got a very good point, because have you purchased anything from eBay from other sellers? Some people, and I get people telling me this, that I sell to because I'm meticulous and I'm like her. I like the fabric. I like I know this is crazy. I look at the labels. Sometimes I'll buy something just because it has a really cool label, or
that's right.
Or just different fabric and things going on. Like, is it cable knit? Is it is it wool? I mean, there's so many things, but long story short, the way it's folded, the way it's put into the plastic bag, which is put into the envelope, and just a little, even a little note or something like that. People don't get that anymore. I mean, my customers tell me, it's like, I could not believe how beautiful the presentation was. And I'm thinking, gosh, I just do that just because that's who I am.
And the opposite is true. Sometimes I do shop on eBay, and sometimes I'll get an item that's just put inside the poly mailer. But we use a plastic bag for every item, and it's got a warning label on there and stuff. So, if you buy a T-shirt or you buy a pair of Levi's or a suit, it all gets wrapped in plastic and then goes into the mailing envelope or mailing box. Well, I've noticed that sometimes I get beautiful handwritten notes and lovely packaging, and sometimes I just get a shirt shoved in a bag and shipped out.
Yep, that's true.
So I make mental notes, but I brought up the way my wife treats the material, the item. The nicest thank you notes are from people who say, geez, this was so nicely packaged and it was wrapped, because people care that you care about what they're buying from you.
That's right. They do. They know.
I learned that from my wife.
Because they don't get that anymore. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen ever, but it's rare. Where I guess I come from life where people had personal shoppers, and you could go into a store and people would be there for you to help you with your shopping. Like a boutique or something. It doesn't happen that way anymore.
That's right.
But
I just noticed I've been holding this phone this whole time.
Oh boy! Well, we're gonna wrap it up.
So I'm gonna put it on the stand here. Is that okay?
Yeah, it's fine. But we do need to wrap it up, because we've been talking for about 45 minutes, which is great. I mean, I could talk, for another couple hours, but I just need to. Zoom is gonna boot me off after a certain amount of time, but I just wanted to say that, is there any platform, or is there anything that you want to promote, or how can people reach out to you just for more information? I mean, there's people that are doing the same things that you're doing, or just curious about what you do and how they can transition into this. So is there a way that people can reach out to you?
Yep. People can email me, bill@modavende.com. It's M as in Mary, ODAVENDE. It's the word Moda and the word Vende put together, modavende.com. My store is called Modavende 2018 on eBay. They can do the advanced search and look up for Modavende, and they can see the items. There's almost 5,500 items for sale right now, and mostly clothing for men and women, some shoes and some other sundry items. but I'm not on social media with the store just yet. That'll be sort of the next phase. I've been focused on trying to develop the store to be consistently, 20,000 a month every month. And we're almost to that point. And then the next goal will be to double that.
Okay. And if you could you just text me that information of your store
Yeah.
name and your email address,
Yes.
just so I can put
Yep.
that in the comments
Yep.
When this goes live. But anyway, Bill, thank you so much for being my guest. It was a wealth of information, and the possibilities are endless, and obviously you are you're a walking testimony of that. So that
Well,
really
I'd
helped
love to
me.
do it again because there's so many opportunities, areas to talk about,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
when people have different passions in their life and expertise, and it can all be applied to the eBay business for sure.
Yeah, it certainly can. And I'm just highlighting this right now and saving it. But anyway, thank you so much. And again, thanks for being on here, everybody. And smash that like button if you like what you heard, and reach out to Bill if you want more information about how he's doing business. And we'll probably do this again down the road, just to see where we're all at, because it is nice to see the transition and how if we've left our careers and doing reselling full time, and people like to hear about the journey. So thanks again, and we'll talk soon. We'll be back again
Okay.
soon. Thank you.
Thanks, man. Bye-bye.